We are with Dina Peterson and Becky Warren, and they're both on the board of the Chelmsford Historical Society, and we're here in the Barrett
Byam Homestead.
Byam Homestead. So first of all, can you tell us, when was Chelmsford first settled and when was it incorporated?
Well, first settled thousands and thousands of years ago by the Native Americans, of course. Eventually, in the 1650s, people started coming and settling here, one of which was John Eliot would come. He was the first Christian.
He considered himself a minister, I think,
Yeah.
of the time.
But he was here to convert the Native Americans to Christianity, and he had a very good rapport. And so I think Chelmsford, when the English settled here, they had a very good rapport with the Native Americans because Mr. Eliot was here already.
Okay.
But so it was 1655 when the king actually incorporated the town of Chelmsford.
Okay. And what did Chelmsford look like then? Was there more land or was it?
Well, it was 6 square miles, the original.
Okay.
And then I think they wanted more land on the other side of the river, and John Eliot was advocating for the Native Americans, saying, you know, we have to set aside some that's just for them, that won't be encroached upon. And so the boundaries have changed a lot, but what is now Lowell and what is now Westford, both were completely in Chelmsford in the
Okay.
beginning, and the parts of Carlisle.
Okay. Now, and so why did people originally come and settle in Chelmsford? Was it for farming or what was it?
Well, there's a lot of natural resources here. It's right on the Merrimack River, the Merrimack and the Concord River, and there's the falls, the Pawtucket Falls, and there's like natural deposits of limestone and bog iron, and lots of streams and ponds for running mills and ice cutting in the ponds and things. So a lot of natural resources here. What do you say, Becky? It was getting too crowded in Woburn and
In
Concord.
Woburn and Concord.
It was
so-
getting too crowded, so they came out
Okay.
here.
In 1655, right.
Yes, yeah.
But farming, your question, yes. Basically
farming.
agricultural base, but needing to build their homes and establish a community, you've got sawmills and grist mills and flour, other types of mills that are coming on the scene, and there's water power to run those. And so Chelmsford was known for that, to have those resources available. And as
Okay.
Dina said, you got limestone, which is for plaster and for building with bricks. And so with the development of...
And there were clay deposits for the
bricks.
For the brickyard.
So the whole Merrimack Valley, as it starts to grow, Chelmsford had the resources to help that happen.
Excellent. So what period of time did that last, that kind of commerce, from when to when?
Probably till after the Revolution.
Okay, so the late 1700s.
Yeah, so that was just a nice kind of quiet town for 120 so years. But they were farming, and they were going back and forth to Boston to sell wood and food and things like that. And then they would get imports from the port of Boston and bring them out here. So it was commerce between the two towns. We have quite a few firsts, actually, in Chelmsford,
Oh,
and one of which was the Middlesex Canal. Well, that was completed in 1802, and that actually brought more industrialism to the area.
okay.
Like the glass factory, that started up right after the canal.
And there are remnants of that canal that are still around.
Have you been to Billerica yet?
Bill Ricca has.
We haven't.
When you go there, you go to the Canal Museum.
Yeah,
in
that-
Billerica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You wanna know?
Right after you have canals, you started having railroads being built. The same investors are building railroads.
Then the next big thing is Francis Lowell, who in England memorized how to build a cotton mill, came to America. They opened their first cotton mills in Waltham.
Okay.
And then after Mr. Lowell passed away, the two associates, started building the mills in Lowell. They built their own little town, and then it ended up being annexed off of Chelmsford, and they named it Lowell after Mr. Francis Lowell.
So you have that industrial revolution happening in the town of Lowell, later the city of Lowell. But Chelmsford still had resources to help with some of those mills getting built, which also meant for the farmers, they had markets to sell their produce, their extra produce too. So your question is a good one, because Dina and I have been re-looking at the history of Chelmsford. Like, we do tours of this homestead all the time, but your visit has made us rethink what was so important about Chelmsford and what makes it different maybe about other towns.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the firsts that Dina mentioned, things like the Chelmsford Ginger Ale and the swords that were made here. A match factory, the first place for striking a match that happened right
down the
here,
street.
right down the street from here. So
Wow.
there are some firsts, but it's interesting that your own town isn't really a little isolation. It isn't an island.
Yes.
That other towns help make your town successful, and you help other towns. So
Yeah, absolutely.
it is interesting to think about the expanse of how things happen.
Yeah.
Right,
over-
exactly.
Over town.
In
Okay.
North Chelmsford, George C. Moore worked in a little wool scouring plant that his father owned on Beaver Brook or something up there. And then he was like, I want my own factory. And he built, like big 5-story factories to scour the wool and spin the wool, and pretty much until the end of the World War II.
Oh,
It was,
okay.
there were still dairies here, there were still farms, there were a lot of nurseries where, and people would come out from the city in Lowell, and they would come out here on vacation, and in the 50s, Route 3 and 495 came through town.
Okay, and that made it,
That made a
Lot of
big
changes.
difference,
Mhm.
yep.
The 128 belt,
Yeah.
Route 128 has a lot of the high-tech companies.
Mhm.
So in the 50s, you start seeing the farms disappearing in Chelmsford and housing is being built.
Right.
So you start seeing neighborhoods and developments that are being formed because people needed places to live, because there were jobs, different types of jobs in the
Not
area,
farming
not
jobs.
farming jobs.
Right.
And so that transition begins in the 1950s. And today, I think there's a couple of no dairy farms, which is what the mainstay was, but there are a few farms left. And thankfully, the town has purchased open space in the last 10 years or so, properties that were up for sale, former farms, and those are now being preserved for the residents and others to use them and enjoy them.
Anybody else famous from Chelmsford?
Lance Wilder graduated from Chelmsford High School, and for anybody that watches The Simpsons, oftentimes there's reference to certain pizza places or whatnot. He's an artist for The Simpsons, and he still is right now, I believe. So there's quite a few businesses in town that have wonderful pictures, and if you look at The Simpsons, that's the Adams Library in Chelmsford, but in the background on The
Oh.
Simpsons show.
Well, thank you so much for spending the time to talk to us today. We love hearing about the history of towns, and
We're glad you came to visit.
Oh, very glad
so
you
are
came.
we.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you.
There isn't a plant here anymore, but
Yeah,
you can still buy Chelmsford Ginger Ale in Market Basket.
Okay,
It was originally produced in Chelmsford.
okay.
And there's all different kinds of bottles there. Over time, where it was ginger beer, and then ginger ale, and they made a few other different things. But the fact that you can still buy Chelmsford ginger ale today is kind of fun. And the water that they use for their spring to make their ginger beer and ginger ale
came from right up in this neighborhood.